Well, good afternoon, everybody. Darren Saul here. Welcome to another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. It's episode 124 for Friday afternoon. And the topic for today is literature engagement, so much more than colouring sheets and word searches, with a lovely Kellie Nissen. How you doing, Kellie?
Great, thank you, Darren.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, after close to 45 years at school as a student and a teacher, Kellie Nissen can finally say she's graduated. But learning never ends, and she remains passionate about quality teaching and literature engagement. Kellie is now a full-time editor and writer who specializes in helping fiction authors as well as business owners achieve their best possible writing through anything from complete ghostwriting or book coaching through to structural editing and proofreading. She also writes children's and young adult fiction and slightly icky supernatural short stories for adults. Kellie is also very passionate about the importance of quality teaching aids and notes and resources to supplement books for children and exhibitions at tourist exhibitions and attractions. So Kellie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darren.
Wow, so you've been pretty busy.
Yes, I have been a little bit busy recently, actually. Yeah.
Doing lots of stuff.
Mm.
But I'd love to hear more about you and how you got into writing. Were you always into writing as a child? Did you have a journal, a diary? How did you fall into writing?
Yeah, not so much a journal or a diary, although I did try to keep one of those. As a primary school student, I loved writing, and way back 100 years ago when I was in primary school, I'm pretty sure the stuff that we used to do was called process writing, although it basically seemed to be mainly stories and narrative. And we seem to have, from my memory, lots and lots and lots of time for free writing whatever we want for as long as we wanted. And I don't actually remember writing anything apart from fiction in primary school, but I'm sure we did. Yeah. Probably my biggest memory, which I talk about quite a bit, is standing up in primary school with my writing book very proudly and reading my really, really, really long, tedious, repetitious stories to the whole school, who had to sit there politely and quietly and then clap me at the end. But
to the whole school?
The whole school, yes. So we'd sort of sit there and do a bit of voice projection and read it out. And I know that these stories, they were long and lots of dialogue and blah, blah, blah. But I was so proud of being chosen to read them out. And I really, really loved writing. But then in high school, it seemed to drop off, and we seemed to focus more on the non-fiction and the informational writing. It became more important. And somewhere along the way, I stopped doing that creative writing, and I only really picked it up again for me about 5 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, it was sort of, I had a bit of a break.
And what made you decide to pick it up again?
Oh, that's a long story, that one. I'll try to cut that one down. So I had been teaching full time for 20 years, in between, having a couple of breaks for maternity leave and that sort of thing, but pretty much full time. And I got to the point where I just thought, I can't do this full time anymore. Yeah. And my principal was nice enough to allow me to actually drop my hours from full time down to 2 days a week, which is huge, particularly when you get your first pay packet. But I sat there for the first term and I'm like, this is nice. I don't really know what else I want to do. I just want to do something different. And then along comes an advertisement for the local, the Canberra Institute of Technology, their evening courses. And lo and behold, there was a writing for children's course being offered. And I went, why not? Might as well do that. And it sort of picked up from there. I, ended up with a great teacher and some great friends, and we sort of jollied each other along. And from there, I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and I joined the Australian Society of Authors and did lots of courses. And yeah, it's been
reignited the passion for the word.
Absolutely. And I absolutely love it.
Well done. And so do you still teach at all, or you mainly work as a writer?
Okay, so I was teaching up until July this year, and this year I'm going to say I was only teaching at school 1 day a week. So I'd sort of, over the course of starting my business, I reduced my hours, and I just couldn't let go, because there's that, I'm quite risk averse. Yeah. And eventually I just thought, oh, I can't, 1 day a week. I was waking up, I was going in, just going through the motions, loving it while I was there. Yeah. But getting there was difficult. And so I took leave without pay. So I have been teaching up until, like in a school, up until July this year still. But I see my role as an editor as it's a teaching role as well, because I don't just get people's work and look at it and put my red pen through it and send it back. It is that teaching aspect there as well, and the communication, and let's have a conversation about how you could change this and improve it. So absolutely. I think I will always be a teacher, but I love that aspect of it. I'm just doing something I really, really love now.
I love that. And funny you should mention that, because I always say as well, I'm a photography teacher or photography tutor, and I always say you learn so much and learn so well and really develop yourself through teaching others.
Yeah.
Is that something that you found as well?
Yeah, I agree with that. I've always come back, actually, when I was looking at those questions, I came back straight away. That saying, which I had to Google it, it's from George Bernard Shaw, from one of his books or a drama series, where he says, those who can do and those who can't teach. Mm-hmm. And I think that saying is probably the bane of every teacher's life, because it's a real put down. But for me, I sort of think, in order to teach something, to get that knowledge across, you actually have to understand it really well yourself. Absolutely. And to understand it, you have to be able to do it. So, but on the same thing, I've also had situations as a primary school teacher where I've had to, because of the curriculum, I've had to teach a particular topic to my students, and it might be a topic that I'm either not overly interested in, I might not have done it when I was at school, I'm not familiar with it, but as a teacher, I still have to teach it. So in the process of researching it and planning the lessons, and then discovering the content with the students, that I actually learn more through the teaching process, and you learn from the students. And
definitely, it's a fluid interaction. You're constantly learning and teaching at the same time, and you're developing yourself, and you're looking at things from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
So I agree. That quote is a little bit strange, because I don't know what the context was really, but a lot of teachers are doing at the same time as teachers.
Yes. Yep.
They're practical teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, though, is for teachers or anybody who's in that teaching tutoring role, is to not to pretend to the students that you know it all, because we're all, I think the best teachers are also lifelong learners. And
that's so true.
The best way I have learnt so much from even the kindergarten students that I worked with last year, is, they just open your eyes to new things. So learning stuff together and discovering things together, I think, is really the best way for everybody to learn and improve your skills and engage in things. So yes, in answer to your question, the original one, yes, definitely.
And so tell us a bit about exactly, what you do, because you do a number of different things from a literacy point of view. Tell us a bit about the different types of services and things that you do.
Yep. So through Just Right Words, everything is centered around words, obviously. But I think when I narrow it down, there are 3 key services that I offer. There's the education resource side of things. We're developing teacher notes and helping authors prepare workshops to take into the schools. There's the editing services side of things, so fiction and non-fiction. and even within editing services, there are so many different levels, right from the start at the bottom, the very, very basic proofreading, just the spelling and grammar, all the way up to book coaching and coaching with writing. And then you've got all the editing in between that. And then there are the writing services that I offer as well. So part of that is writing the teacher notes, but I also will write blog posts for businesses and all that sort of thing. So for people who don't have time to actually do that writing themselves, right, but they might have the idea, they don't have the time, or they don't have the confidence. My clients fall into 4 categories. I've got my authors, who are they're my passion, my publishers, my small business, and my tourist and cultural institutions, as you said. But all of those services, they overlap, yes, with those clients. But really my primary focus is the authors, and linking the authors with the schools, and, you know, getting them in there, and, you know, helping children to develop a love of reading and writing, and helping authors help children do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I really want to touch on that, because you're very passionate about writing quality teaching notes and supplements. So where did that come from, and why do you think that's such an important part of what you do?
Yeah, that is my current soapbox issue. I have many soapbox issues, but that's my current one right now. And I think, like, there are lots of teaching notes out there that accompany books, and there's lots of teaching resources. So lots of your tourist institutions that do excursions for schools, they have teaching packs and all that sort of thing, or they might have their own publication arm, like the Museum of the National Library of Australia. And so they will often produce teaching notes to go with it. So I don't think, like, there's not that teaching notes are lacking, or that the ones that are there aren't quality, because there's a lot of really good ones out there. But where I think, as a teacher, I think where they fall down is in 2 areas. So firstly, they're really, really limited in the age range or the grade that they target. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you're looking at picture books, everybody goes, oh, picture books, they're for little kids. So the teaching notes, because they're picture books, the teaching notes are really only for preschool year, kindergarten year 1 and 2. And whereas really, my preference is to use picture books with the older children, because you can do a lot more with them. And in the younger grades, you read them a picture book, and they're about the love of the book and the literacy and that sort of thing. But the really meaty stuff happens when they're older. And the other thing that I think a lot of teacher notes are limited in is the curriculum scope. So the notes that are out there now, it's a book, therefore it's literacy. So therefore all the activities are literacy based. Whereas you might have a totally fictional book, but it might have some sort of science thread in it. So you can use that book, and you can use it, instead of teaching English with it, you can use it as the basis for teaching your science lesson. Wow. Or your social science lesson, or health lesson, or whatever. So I think there's so many opportunities to use different books in so many different ways with so many different ages, that it's just really, from what I've seen, it's really unexplored by the people who write the teaching notes. So they're pigeonholing these books into really limited categories. Yeah. And by doing that, it's almost like, not deliberately, but it's like they're doing a disservice to the authors, because they're not promoting what the broad appeal of their books is, but they're also doing a disservice to teachers and students. So I think teachers these days, and here's my other soapbox, teachers these days are so much more time poor than when I started 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of time to search through multiple lessons and books to find perfect matches for what we need to teach. So if I'm teaching year 6, I'm going to search for lessons for year 6. And in doing so, I'm probably going to miss some really amazing opportunities to teach something great through picture books, because picture books are for 5-year-olds. So I think in the grand scheme of things, all of this requires this massive shift in attitude from publishers who promote the teacher notes, from writers and content developers who write the teacher's notes, and from teachers themselves, and from authors who think they've written a picture book and it should only be promoted to 5-year-olds, whereas really it can go further. So yeah, I don't know whether one person can change this, but I'm going to give it a shot.
How in depth do you have to really understand the topic to write proper teacher notes? How much preparation do you have to go through to actually write good teacher notes?
That is a really good question. You've thrown me a curly one there. I think to write really good quality teacher notes, there's a few things that you need to understand. Like, obviously you need to have read the book really, really well. Yeah. With a picture book, it's not as easy as it sounds, because even though your picture book only might have 200, 300 words, there's also the illustrations in the picture book that tell 3/4 of the story. Yeah. So you've got to have a very deep understanding of the book that you're writing the teacher notes for. You need to have a really good understanding of the curriculum itself. So there's a lot of authors I know whose publishers, they ask them to, just throw together some teacher notes, and they're lost because they don't know necessarily how they relate to the curriculum. So just as an example, I was working with somebody who wanted to put some sort of maths activity in with her teacher notes, and she said, I'm going to do, I think it was graphs or something. And I said, well, actually, no, that fits more in the HASS curriculum, or the social studies curriculum, because it's about looking at the flow of graphs and the information you can get from them. So yes, it's maths, but it's actually really ensconced in your social studies curriculum. And she's like, no, it's graphs. It has to be maths. And I'm like, no. So it is needing to have that deep understanding of the curriculum and how it works and how it applies to teachers. And in terms of content matter, I think you do need to have an understanding of the content matter, but it depends how deeply you're going to go into it. So where do I put the book? Gina Newton, and I'm going to name a name here because she's just absolutely gorgeous. She wrote this book here. Love it. Combat
Wombat to the rescue. Love it.
Yeah. So this is beautiful, a beautiful book. But Gina she's a marine biologist and a scientist and a children's author. So if you've got an author who is very knowledgeable in their field or in a different field, the person writing the teacher notes really needs to collaborate with the author so that the author has that background knowledge. So Gina has a lot of knowledge about sustainability and sustainable environment and that sort of thing. And her other book that's just recently been published, Hold On, Saving the Spotted Handfish, that's all about marine ecology and sustainability. So she, when I was working with her on her teacher notes, she had all that scientific background and I had the curriculum knowledge, and we put that together to produce the teacher notes. Nice. So yeah, it depends how in depth you want to go. Yeah. But yeah, it is important. There's no point in writing teacher notes about a science topic if you don't really understand the topic yourself. Yeah. It sort of shows.
And do you do a lot of ghostwriting of books, like in-depth books for people that don't have the time to write themselves or don't have the skill?
I don't do a lot of that. I know people who do. I do. It is a service that I offer. But ghostwriting in itself, really, the way I do it is you need to really get to know the person and really communicate with them. And really, you've got to capture their voice in what you write. So they might not feel confident with writing the words, they might not know how to put them together, but you need to do a lot of talking so that you can almost become that person to get their words down.
Gotcha. So true.
The massive
It probably takes a bit of time to really get to know someone and understand their personality before you can really write an effective novel or piece of work on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
Their personality, it's their style.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. And so you're based in Canberra?
I am, yes.
In lovely Canberra. And do you work with people all around Australia, some people overseas, or is it mainly local for you?
Oh, that's the great joy actually of editing, is that, and with Zoom now as well, that, you know, I can work with people locally, and, you know, we can do some face-to-face. So Gina is a local author. I can work with people interstate, overseas. So I do have one client who is over in Japan, and she's a translator. So she translates from Japanese into English, and then I proofread all of her documents. So she's absolutely wonderful. And she works mainly in the arts area. So you learn so much from doing the proofreading. So, and I write blog posts for a tutoring company called Superprof as well, which is a fantastic job because it gives me that freedom to sort of stretch my creative muscles, as it were. But yeah, being able to work with anybody through writing is I'm really lucky to be able to do it.
It must be incredibly rewarding.
It is very rewarding, actually. Yeah.
Have you got any good stories about how you've coached or helped somebody in their writing journey, and, you know, with incredible results? Any stories?
Yes. So now I'm just trying to find it because I can't remember. Yeah, I think in terms of being a teacher, like every teacher I know, myself included, lives for that moment where we realise that we've actually made a really positive impact on a student. And surprisingly enough, those real moments, they're sort of few and far between. Like you see your students progress and, you know, then they move on and blah, blah, blah. But every now and then you just have this impact on one student that you just go, wow, this is why I do what I do. So for me as a teacher, a few years ago, I started up a lunchtime writing club at my school that I was at the time, which was open to all students, and they could come in at lunchtime, they could write whatever they wanted. I think one of the great attractions to this was the fact I let them bring their computers in. But there was one particular child who really, really disliked writing in class, and his teacher said to me, he's like, oh, I'm really surprised that, you know, so-and-so's coming to, you know, to your writing club. Is he actually writing? And I'm like, he's writing, he's actually working on a short story and a novel and that sort of thing. So he didn't like writing in class, but he'd come to writing club religiously every week, and I would get in trouble if I wasn't running the writing club. And later on, just a couple of years down the track, he said to me that he decided that he actually really loved writing now because I'd showed him that writing could be fun, that it wasn't all about just writing what the teacher said. And he actually was shortlisted in the school's annual writing competition last year. So
fantastic.
Little moments like that are, you know, absolutely fantastic. So, and to get that reaction from adults as well, who you've sort of given a few suggestions to for their story, and then they've come back at the end and gone, oh, wow, I just, you know, I was stuck. I didn't know how to move the story forward, absolutely stuck, but you've given me that spark, and now I think I can go ahead with this. Just that feedback, that's why I do this. Yeah, it does keep you going. And, you know, you don't get it from everybody, and some people just go, oh, you know, thanks, that's great. But yeah, when you know somebody's really struggling, and you can help them in some way. That's what life's all about, to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well done. Well said, Kelly. Well said. So now, if people want to get in touch with you to hear more about your services, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go through my website, which is www.justwritewords.com.au, or a simple phone call, and my number's on my website.
Awesome.
So be more than happy to hear from people.
Fantastic. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to leave us with before we finish up?
Can I leave you with two things?
Sure.
Is that all right? But probably two messages. And the first one for authors, and we call anybody who writes, I think, has the right to call themselves an author, whether or not they've been published. But a message for authors and for publishers, and I've written this in caps up on the screens, please don't let your books be pigeonholed into one category, and don't think they can only be used to teach one age level and one subject, because the teachers out there need you to think outside the square.
Nice.
And the second little message, and this is for anybody who thinks they can't write. It's amazing how many people say to me, oh no, I can't write.
Yep.
Everybody can write. You just need the confidence to do it. So business owners, anybody that's got a story inside them that they're just busting to tell, you can write. You just need somebody to guide you and encourage you and help you find the tools.
So true. Absolutely true. I totally agree with you. I think there's creativity in everybody, and it's just about how we access it and how we develop it.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Kelly, for coming on the show today. That was really, really a great conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm going to put all the links in the show notes for everybody to find you, and really appreciate your time again on this Friday afternoon.
Fantastic, Darren. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So all the audience out there, I hope you have a great afternoon, a great weekend, and we'll see you very, very soon for another episode of Playing with Perspective. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.